Most people scroll past international news, wars, treaties, sanctions, border disputes. It feels distant, like someone else's world. Almost 4 in 10 people worldwide said they sometimes or often actively avoid the news. Why? Because it doesn't seem to touch their daily lives. No urgency, no relevance, just headlines from places they will never visit. But what if that disconnect is an illusion? What if a mountain range could determine whether your country goes to war? A river could secure your food supply, and a desert could shape the future price of fuel in your city. This is an abstract theory, it's geopolitics, the study of how geography, power, and strategy collide. From the South China Sea to the Arctic Circle, from the gas pipelines to the grain routes, geopolitics reveals the invisible forces driving our headlines. And today, we are pulling back the curtain. Whether you are a student, a policymaker, or simply curious about how the world really works, this is where your understanding begins. Welcome to Rare Nectar, and this is Uncover the Basic of Geopolitics. Let's break it down. The word geopolitics is a combo of two things: geo meaning earth and politics meaning power, decisions, and relationships. So, at its core, geopolitics asks, how does geography influence political power? Imagine two countries, one has oil, the other doesn't. One has warm water ports, the other freezes over every winter. Those differences aren't just geography, they shape who trades, who defends, and who wins. The term geopolitics first took off in the early 1900s. A Swedish political scientist named Rudolf Schellen coined it. He believed states were like living organisms, needing space, resources, and cohesion to survive. His view was deeply influenced by Frederick Ratzel, a German geographer. Geography, in his view, was their lifeblood. This idea later influenced both political theory and controversially expansionist ideologies of Nazi. Later thinkers like Alfred Mackinder added fuel to the idea. He argued that whoever controlled the heartland, the central part of the continent Europe and Asia, could dominate the world island, the combination of Europe, Asia, and Africa, and thus the world. This theory deeply shaped British, Soviet, and American strategies in the 20th century. So, geopolitics isn't just theory, it's been backed into how superpowers plan, where they build bases, even where they send aid. Think of geopolitics as the backstage manager of world affairs. You may not always see it, but it is choreographing the moves. But here's the twist: geography doesn't act alone. In the next section, we will uncover the real cast of characters, the maps, the minerals, and the mind games that define modern power. If geography sets the stage, then geopolitics provide the instruments through which power is exercised. Let us begin with the most essential tool: maps. Not decorative maps, but analytical ones. Maps that trace pipelines, maritime choke points, and population densities. In geopolitics, a narrow strait such as the Strait of Hormuz may carry more weight than entire nations, because nearly 20% of the world's oil supply flows through it. Next, consider natural resources: oil, natural gas, lithium, and wheat. These are not merely economic assets. They are instruments of leverage and sometimes silent weapons. In 2022, Russia curtailed natural gas exports to Europe. No tanks, no troops, only the turning of a belt. And it reverberated through the economies of an entire continent. Geopolitics doesn't always unfold on battlefields. It often plays out through control over energy corridors, shipping lanes, or the global food supply. Now shift the lens to human geography, ethnic divisions, linguistic boundaries, and religious affiliations. Modern borders rarely align with the identities of those who inhabit them. This mismatch generates friction. For example, the Kurdish population spread across Turkey, Iraq, Iran, and Syria, one ethnic group divided across four sovereign states. And finally, a new and rapidly evolving tool, a technology. Satellites now monitor troop movements and maritime activity in real time. Artificial intelligence is increasingly used to forecast risks, from crop failures to political unrest. Though these tools are still evolving and not without limitations. Even digital platforms, social media, and such engines are increasingly used in psychological and information warfare. But tools alone do not drive geopolitics. They are wielded by actors with motives, shaped by perception, history, and ideology. In our next section, we explore the psychology of statecraft and why a leader's worldview can influence global outcomes just as powerful as geography. Geography may define a country's options, but human psychology often decides which path is taken. To understand geopolitics, we must also understand how leaders think, their fears, ambitions, and perception of threat or opportunity. Consider the Thucydides trap, a theory proposed by political scientist Graham Allison. The Thucydides trap is a term used to describe the tendency for conflict to arise when a rising power threatens to displace an existing dominant power. It comes from the ancient Greek historian Thucydides, who wrote about the Peloponnesian War between Athens and Sparta in the 5th century BCE. He famously observed, "It was the rise of Athens and the fear of Sparta that made war inevitable." This quote is the foundation of the idea fear and insecurity between rising and ruling powers often lead to war. The psychological pattern seen in history from Sparta versus Athens to Britain versus Germany. In today's context, it's most often used to analyze the US as the current hegemon versus China as the rising power. China sees itself as reclaiming a rightful place, while America sees itself as defending the rules it built. Geopolitics is not just about where countries are, but how they see themselves and each other. Let's go deeper. Leaders often act based on historical memory. In Russia, the collapse of the Soviet Union is remembered as a national humiliation. In Turkey, memories of the Ottoman Empire shape modern aspirations. In Iran, decades of foreign intervention fuel distrust of the West. These narratives pass down through education, media, and tradition. Some scholars call this phenomenon as strategic culture. But it's not just strategy, it's a shared mindset that influences how threats are perceived and decisions are made. Even risk tolerance varies. Some leaders are pragmatic, others are idealistic or fatalistic. North Korea's Kim Jong-un and France's Emmanuel Macron both operate under pressure, but their psychological environments could not be more different. Which brings us to the final puzzle piece, where all these forces, geography, tools, and psychology converge in the real world. In our bonus section, we examine current hotspots, where pipelines, borders, and ambitions collide. So, what does it really take to understand geopolitics? Not just maps, not just headlines, but a deeper lens. Here we have 7 points of a powerful lens for making sense of global behavior. First, geography. Not just where countries are on the map, but how the land itself shapes their fate. The Himalayas didn't just rise, they became India's shield. The Strait of Hormuz isn't just water, it's a global choke point for oil. Mountains, rivers, coasts, they all draw invisible lines of advantage or threat. Then comes politics. Who holds power? How are decisions made? What kind of system are they operating in? A decision made in a parliament looks very different from one made behind closed doors. And yet, Both can tip the balance of power. Now at economics. Money isn't just money. It's supply chains, energy roads, foreign debt, and sanctions. And each of these can be used to build alliances or break them. A port deal here, a gas contract there, and suddenly the global chessboard shifts. And then history. Every border has a backstory, a wound, a betrayal, a war, and a treaty. And nations often act not just on logic, but on memory, as if the past is still unfolding. And then the fifth is psychology. Leaders feel ambition, fear, pride, and whole nations do too. Collective trauma or national identity can shape foreign policy as much as logic can. Sixth, culture and identity. You can always see them, not on satellite image, but religion, language, and ethnicity define how groups see themselves and how they respond when they feel threatened, offended, or hurt. Seventh, tools of influence. Some are obvious, like troops, bases, and pipelines, while others are quieter, universities, films, or foreign aid. And now the newest weapon, algorithms. Digital surveillance, AI decision making, information war. The battleground has expanded and it's everywhere. This is geopolitics, a web of forces, visible and invisible, that move nations like pieces on a board. Geopolitics is like playing chess in the dark. To see clearly, you must understand not only the board, but the motives, the memory, and the mood of each player. So, next time you hear a headline about a border class, a trade bond, or a pipeline deal, pause, look beyond the surface, and ask what history is being remembered, what geography is being leveraged, and what psychology is at play. So the next time you hear about a war, summit, or sanctions deal, remember, it's not just politics, it's geography, power, and strategy. Geopolitics is the language of the world stage, and now you speak a little more of it. But this is just the beginning, because in this series, Uncover the Basics, we are not just learning what geopolitics is, we are uncovering how it works, who wields it, and why it shapes everything from food prices to foreign policy. In the next episode, we dive deeper how geography shapes global power, and why some nations are destined for strength while others struggle from the start. Until then, stay curious, stay critical, and keep asking what's really driving the headlines. This is Rare Nectar, and you have just unlocked the first layer of how the world really works. See you next time.